let me demonstrate to you how using the normal curve on your calculator can work. So we're going to go through these two problems on the left side of the screen. It says the shelf life of a brand of milk is normally distributed with a mean of 12 days and a standard deviation of 3 days. Find the probability that the milk lasts longer than 14 days. So the first thing I always want to do is draw my picture. Remember, you're going to get points for drawing the picture on the test. So I'm just going to mark somewhere on my curve 14 days. Since the mean is 12 days, I know that 14 is going to be above average, so I'll just place it somewhere over here on the right side of the curve. It doesn't really matter exactly where, and I'll mark 14. Then I'm going to shade to show what it is I'm trying to find. So this question specifically says lasts longer than 14 days. That would mean I'm trying to find this area, everything above that line. Anytime I go into the right tail, I'm going to be using infinity, which you wrote down in your notes. Infinity is 1e99 in the calculator because there's actually no infinity button. So I also like to label my tail as 1e99. This is just going to help me when I'm ready to type everything in, and I'll show you why in just a second. So I'm going from 14 to infinity. On my calculator, how this is going to look is I'm going to press the second button in the upper left-hand corner. Then I press this VARS button right below the arrows. It says distribution on top, so you can remember that because we're working with normal distribution, so that's where we're ending up getting to. We have normal PDF and normal CDF. We always use CDF for our class. We'll never ever pick normal PDF, so don't get confused. You'll get the wrong answer if you pick normal PDF, so always choice 2, normal CDF, and then select that. Press enter. Now, depending on if you're using an older or newer calculator, your screen might look a little bit different at this point. The newer calculator is actually pretty nice because it tells you right in order. It'll say lower, upper, mu for mean, sigma for standard deviation. So you're just going to enter down or arrow down in between each number. If you have a newer calculator that looks like that, if your calculator looks like mine, we're just going to separate each number by a comma. So you go right in order from lower to upper. The lower is where your shading starts, and if you draw out the curve, it's really nice because it's just going to go from left to right. So our shading starts right here at 14. And then either arrow down to upper or press comma, which is above the 7. To type in infinity, it's kind of tricky the first time around, but then you get the hang of it. It's 1. And you need to make sure you get the right E to go there, because if you don't pick the right E, then you're not going to get the correct answer. The correct E we want is second comma. If you see there's like 2 little capital E's above that, and it makes a short capital E on the screen. And then 99. That just means a 1 with 99 zeros after it, which is the closest we'll get to infinity. Comma, the mean. The mean was 12 days, or arrow down. And then comma or arrow down the standard deviation, 3 days. Now this is going to be super nice because we're telling the calculator a couple of things. By saying it's going from 14 to infinity, the calculator knows which direction we're working with, so there's no more subtracting from 1 or subtracting 2 different decimals that you find. It will automatically give you the answer as long as you type it in the correct way. Additionally, since the calculator knows the exact mean and standard deviation for this problem, we don't actually have to convert to a z-score once we find the probability. We already know our answer by just typing it all in. So we would get 0.2525. That means that shaded area is about 25% of the curve, or in other words, there's about a 25% chance that the milk will last longer than 14 days. To show your work, if you're going to be using the calculator for credit on a test, you would type it, or you would write out normal CDF, and then just everything you typed in. So if you just write that out, that would constitute as work, and then we have our final answer of the 2525, 0.2525. So again, it's 25% chance that the milk would last longer than 14 days. Let's look at this next problem. Notice the first problem said to find the probability, which is why we were using normal CDF. This time it's giving us the probability and asking us for a specific shelf life. So in this case, we want to find the actual observation. You'll have to be pretty careful about how you're reading through these problems to know which calculator command to use or which direction you're being given. So in this problem, it says what shelf life corresponds to the top 10%. So I'm just going to mark a line on my curve. Top 10%, will that go on the right or the left of the line if I have the top 10%? Top 10% goes on the right-hand side of the line. So 0.10 for 10. So the problem is when I use my calculator command to go backwards, my calculator only is smart enough to know or recognize bottom areas. So if I have 10% on the top, what percent is left for the bottom? That would be 90% because together they must make 100% or 1 in terms of decimals. So now I'm going to put 90% in my curve. Notice this time I'm not marking the line, but I'm trying to find what actually is this number or how many days correspond to that line. So what I'm going to do for this command is press second vars. Same menu we were in before, but this time I'm going to choice 3 inverse norm. Inverse norm when we're going backwards, when we know the area or the percent and we're trying to find the actual observation. There are only 3 things to type in for this one. Always the area below, so it's really important that you make sure you're doing this 90% right here. You'll type that in as a decimal, so 0.9 or 0.90, it doesn't matter. Comma the unique mean, which was 12. Comma or arrow down, the unique standard deviation, which is 3. Voila, I get my number of days, 15.84 days. So if I want to know that the top 10% of shelf lives will correspond to 15.8 days. So for my work, I can just write down exactly what I typed in. That satisfies for my work, and then 15.84. Maybe we should put days on there, and that is my answer. So I think hopefully you'll catch on that it is, I think, much easier to use a calculator than the table, but as I said before, the table is still always an option if you don't have a graphing calculator at home or if you've caught on to the table so well that you prefer it. I just think it takes a little bit more time with having to work with the z-score formula. The calculator completely ignores the z-score formula and does it all for you at once. You're going to move on in the Prezi and try a few problems on your own.